We take a look at Air Force One, and we have President Joe Biden coming down the steps, waving to those assembled there to greet him, and he will be greeted by Shawn Fain, president of the UAW. In order, that's the president there now greeting Shawn Fain, the president of the UAW, and has turned out to be a real firebrand. Quite a difference in leadership of the UAW compared to previous leadership. Now he's greeting Debbie Dingell, a longtime friend of the Bidens. Of course, her husband has been in Washington for a long time. She has been in Washington for a long time as well. Rashida Tlaib there greeting the president. Sri Tanadar is up next, who is speaking to the president while the president stands in front and greets Rashida Tlaib. There is Sri and Garland Gilchrist II greeting President Biden as well. So that is the greeting party here for President Biden's visit. Some or all of those folks may actually travel with the president to walk the picket lines. We have seen Debbie Dingell, we've seen Rashida Tlaib on the picket lines there as well. So pulling out, giving you a wider view of Air Force One, the Beast, and the president. There is the presidential motorcade that will be traveling to a site in Wayne County where the president will walk the picket lines with UAW workers on day 12 of this strike. We don't know which site he will visit, but we are told at this point that it will be a site in Wayne County. So that cuts down on the number of sites. There are 14 sites where workers are hitting the picket lines here in Metro Detroit, but the president will be at a Wayne County site in short order. He's standing there greeting those that have come to greet him, and you can see Debbie Dingell putting her arm around Shawn Fain as she and Shawn Fain speak to the president. I would love to be able to hear what's being said, but of course, you know, the media is kept back and kept far back, and we can only see the greetings, not really even in a place to read lips, but the president there greeting three Democratic members of Congress, a union leader, and Michigan's Democratic Lieutenant Governor Garland Gilchrist II. So we're going to stay with this as the president greets that party and ultimately when he drives away. And then we will catch up with the president after he drives away. When he makes it to whichever site he will visit, we will be bringing you those live pictures as well. This is the first time that anyone can recall that a sitting U.S. president has decided to leave Washington and hit the picket lines. Now, in talking to and hearing some of the deliberations in the White House, lots of political experts say that one of the risks here with the president is that, yes, the UAW is a powerful union. It is a large union. Right now, workers are hitting the picket lines from Long Beach to Philadelphia. However, it is not the only union that's picketing right now. Screen actors are picketing. And they may say, well, what about us? Other unions, the video game makers, the actors and stop motion folks, the motion capture artists are threatening to picket. They just voted for strike authorization. They may say, what about us? We've seen folks here locally. The graduate student unions at the University of Michigan, there are 3 campuses, they were picketing. Other folks may say, what about us? So political leaders were saying, political experts were saying that that's part of the risk that the president is taking here. When you wade into union contracts, it is never just the contract that you intend to speak about, that there are unforeseen consequences that could come out of this. And of course, the president deciding that it is worth the risk. Michigan has been a battleground state for the last several elections, and it is going to be a battleground state in 2024. Right now, it looks like it'll be President Biden and former President Trump. And both of those men will need Michigan to carve out a path to the White House. And for that, they will both need a solid showing among union workers. The reason why former President Trump was able to perform as well as he did in 16 and 20 is because he cut into that union leadership and that union membership. And here we have President Biden trying to solidify, trying to hold on to that union support. Now, the union has not come out and endorsed his candidacy, his reelection bid just yet. And this may be a way that President Biden is trying to woo or encourage the union to actually come out and endorse him. Shawn Fain, president of the UAW, has said that it is not about politics, and he's come out when former President Trump said he's going to come out and visit workers here Shawn Fain pushed back, saying we don't need billionaires involved, and billionaires don't really know what it's like to be a working person. So that's what he had to say about the visit there. We'll hear later on what Shawn Fain has to say about his visit with President Biden.